I'm here today and excited to bring to you one of the brightest lights in the world of photography worldwide, John Paul Caponigro. Hello, John. How are you?
Hey, Larry. I'm well. Thank you. Thank you for
Now,
that.
now, am I doing a decent job on Caponigro?
Yes, you are.
Oh,
Absolutely.
okay, good. I just
Yeah.
I don't like to bungle pronunciation and then keep it going throughout the call. So anyway, thanks for being with us. Thanks for taking time, and you are incredibly prolific and productive in reaching the highest levels in photography. And, in addition to that, you do have workshops that people can come to and learn this stuff. And the great thing about these workshops, I'll sell your workshop for you, is the fact that you're going to get like, uh, you know, decades of blood, sweat, and tears and learning and trial and error and experimenting crammed into a few days. And those things are just priceless. And it's not a matter of what it costs. It's a matter of if this is something you want to be serious about in your life, what will it cost you not to get that kind of heads up? It's like Isaac Newton said, if I have seen farther than other uh, people in the world of mathematics and physics and all this because I stood on the shoulders of those who came before me. And so I know you're big on quotes, so I thought I would.
And that's one of my favorites.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So I would, I'm sure I bungled it a little bit, but anyway, that's the
No, I think
idea.
you're pretty darn close. You know where
Eh,
it actually comes from?
Where's that?
It comes from Greek mythology, where one of the giants is putting a figure on his shoulder so he can see further. I don't think it's Chiron, the centaur,
Yeah.
but it goes way back, and it's followed us. But you know, the thing I like about it most is it suggests that our community is not just the living, but all of those who have gone before us and what they've passed on to others.
Exactly. And looking at time as a straight line, rather than just now. So, John, tell people, you know, you got things I could start and go down the list, but we'd be here for a long time. What are you most excited about? I mean, you got like your first. I don't even know how you did that. I told my assistant like I didn't even know they were looking for these things. I could have given them some. Somehow your first iPhone is in the collection of the Smithsonian. And
Sure. Right. Right.
like how do things like I mean, that's the kind of thing that John Paul Caponigro does, pioneering, reaching the top and all of these things. How did that happen?
Well, I don't know. Let's quote Woody Allen there: 99% of success is just showing up.
Is that right?
So, so actually, Shannon Parrish, who runs the photography collection down at the American Museum down there, approached me a long time ago and said she wanted to collect one of every kind of medium that I've ever used.
Ah,
And so she pulled together this very interesting collection, which included my first copy of Photoshop, my first Macintosh, as well as pastel drawings, platinum prints, new inkjet prints. It was a very interesting collection. And so I've worked with her to expand that collection over the years. When something new comes through, like the iPhone or like the new metal prints or like the MagCloud print on demand catalogs, I'll either send them to her or I'll find a collector who will donate it to the collection just to make that really interesting collection even more interesting.
yeah, I
And
didn't know
so,
that was there. I'd love to go see it.
oh, they have a phenomenal collection, phenomenal, all kinds of things. And I mean, I kind of blushed, and I think she was being, I think it was flattery when she said, "This iPhone is fantastic. It's kind of like having one of Muybridge's cameras." I'm like, okay,
Wow.
that's very kind of you. But these things have really changed culture,
Right.
have changed photography. Um,
Absolutely, especially the cameras that are in them now. She might have been hitting on you, John, actually.
no, no, no. She's great, lady, just great, and it's a great collection and
Now
a great
tell
mom.
tell people where you came from to get started in photography. Where did you start?
Well, everybody says your dad's a fine art photographer, so you were fated to be a photographer. When in fact, I really didn't make that decision firmly until I was in my 20s, sometime in the, well, 1990. So that would make me 25
Tell,
when Photoshop came out.
Tell people about your dad.
So my dad is a fine art photographer, kind of the youngest of the West Coast, East Coast collision. He would hang out and teach at Ansel Adams workshops out there. His work is landscape, and he's got that influence. But he also mentored with or was taught, kind of started in with Minor White here on the East Coast, and so that sense of the intimate landscape was very much a part of his sensibility as well. So he's always kind of been bi-coastal, younger than most of those folks. So he's 88 and still working. In fact, right now we're remastering some of his classic negatives. I was just drinking scotch with him last night, working out a few things. We're scanning the original prints, making him a new negative, and I'm just delighted to see him come in with a smile and new energy while he's printing some of his classics, because it's coming a little easier, and he can get where he wants to go faster, and then he can go a little further with it. So that's neat.
Sure.
But I almost got us kicked out of our apartment in Dublin, Ireland. When he first got his Guggenheim grant, I was 2 years old. We took the boat over to Ireland, and I took up mural making. So my parents had to paper train me.
Ah,
They put blocks of paper all over the walls and said, "Hey, kid, on the wall." Not, I mean, on the paper, not on the wall. We got to stay. My mother was a painter, and she turned graphic designer and designed most of his books, and many of Ellie Porter's books, George O'Keeffe's books, so many others. And I get to meet all of these different people and watch that process of her putting these books together. And she was more than just a graphic designer. She was also a great picture editor. So I remember Elliot would often call her in a panic. "Eleanor, I've got this new book. Come quick, help me pick
yeah,
the pictures." He could make
yeah,
them, but he could not necessarily select them and sequence them. And she was an ace at that.
and that is Elliot
Elliot Porter. Yeah.
Porter. Yeah, and so the thing is that unlike most of us, you grew up in a family where your father had kind of set the standard, set the mold, something to live up to. And of course, there were a lot of advantages where like people who grow up and their parents were in the theater and they grew up with actors and comedians like Billy Crystal grew up in that kind of family in New York, and he talked about all these comedians and people would be over at his house for dinner and
Yeah.
after the show and stuff like that. And so, it was in the blood, but uh, what kind of pressure does that put? So you're the reverse of where most of us start, and nobody has any idea about whatever our calling seems to be.
Yeah.
Like if you want to be a swimmer, nobody can swim in your family. For 3 generations, and all of a sudden you want to be an Olympic swimmer. But starting out with a world famous fine art photographer as your uh, dad. What kind of pressure did that put pressure on you? Did you feel pressure to go into it? What was that mentality like, and why did it take you to the mid 20s, your mid 20s, before you decided I'm going to do this?
Well, there's like three parts in there. Um, I'll tell you the colorful part of it. In part, I didn't embrace straight photography fully, even though I came to it relatively late in my college years. I figured, I've got this wonderful teacher here, and I'd be moving away, and I won't have that much more time with Dad. So it'd be nice to spend time with him. At least I'll learn to make good reference for paintings. That drawing that I started at 2 years old
Yeah.
always stayed with me, and I studied in school when I
Yeah.
went to Yale, when I went to University of Santa Cruz. So during those summer years, I worked with Dad. I was particularly fascinated with straight photography's ability to speak in metaphor. Dad photographs this apple, but it looks like a galaxy. How does that sense of transformation happen?
Yeah.
I was fascinated by Siskin's work. How does a literal recording of the world look so abstract, so other?
Yeah.
There were things about photographic vision that just fascinated me, and at the same time, it didn't satisfy the painter in me. I remember going to when I was just starting up. I took a semester off. I helped Dad teach a workshop in Ireland, and we went around Ireland and parts of Europe together. It was a wonderful semester. And we visited an old friend, Fergus Burke, who was the photographer for the Abbey Theatre. Also got one of their National Treasure Awards later as well. And so he starts in. "So you're going into the family business, are you?" "Oh, okay. So who are your influences?" Blake, Bosch. No, no, no. I mean photographers. Oh, Jerry Olsman. No, pick another. He doesn't count. And this was long pre-Photoshop, but can you imagine saying Jerry Olsman doesn't count in this day and age?
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know, I wanted to realize the visions that were in my mind's eye. It
yeah,
wasn't enough for me to just simply record the the literal world in front of me, even though you could work it abstractly and speak in metaphor. I needed to go a little further. And so when I saw Cytex machines, Mom was overseeing the production of L.A. Porter's Intimate Landscapes book at Acme Press in Boston. And they were using Cytex machines to do the color separations, but they could also do all that digital retouching. The minute they cloned a palm olive bottle, changed the proportions, changed green to purple, and twirled it around, oh my God, what if an artist could get a hold of that? I
right,
want one of those. But she
right.
called them $1 million coloring books. And I was like, how am I going to get $1 million? Maybe when I'm 50, if I get lucky, you
Yeah,
know. And then in 1990, just after I'd moved to Maine, Kodak sets up their digital training center, and there's Photoshop One and a Macintosh, and there's my $1 million coloring book. It didn't cost $1 million. It did take a second mortgage, but I was off and running. I knew exactly what I wanted to do with it.
absolutely. And did you feel uh, pressure, or did you feel excitement about being able to do what was really inside you? I mean, you seemed like well into, and this is what I'm trying to wake up a certain segment of the people who listen to this is you really need to it. The power in your life is going to come when you tap into that stuff that's inside you. You
That's
don't
right.
have to put it in there. You don't have to read a book and memorize it and try and follow a formula. Whatever the greatness is that you're capable of is trying to get out,
Right.
probably, and
Yeah. You just have to listen to it,
yeah,
and it's a combination. So many people will just pass it off as talent. Yeah, come on, it's overrated. There's hard work.
yeah,
But then what trumps that is smart work. But then what trumps that is persistence. If you stay in the game long enough, something's going to happen. But if you bail too soon, nothing's going to happen.
yeah,
So you got to show up.
yeah,
It actually takes all of those things. But I think if you don't have passion for what you're doing, you're not going to stay in the game long enough, and you're not going to bring your full resources to it. And there always going to be parts of you that are trying to find fulfillment in other ways. Yeah, I tried to go into comic books because I didn't want to make fine art to go over people's
right,
couches or to be locked up in people's collections in a museum and never be seen. I wanted it to
right.
be a part of the fabric of their life. But I kept getting these reviews like, this is fantastic stuff, but if you want to draw for us, you got to draw like us. It was like trying to cram a round peg in a square hole. It just wasn't the right fit, and I wasn't looking at it really clearly. I gained some really great skills from that, some wonderful friends. It was a good journey, but that failure was very revealing for me, about what I ultimately wanted to do. And along the way, I learned a great deal, not only about business, but also some visual skills about storytelling that extended the kind of picture editing Mom was talking about. And I use those every day today. I still
Yeah,
storyboard my projects.
yeah. I'm embarrassed. I can't remember the guy's name. He's one of the greatest artists or designers in the world. He does a lot of these installations, these mind blowing installations. You know him instantly, but they have a special on him on Netflix. He's part of that design series they have for the
Hmm.
greatest designers in the world and artists, and talk about how they go about their business. And this guy's got a staff, he's got installations, he's got everything. But he was talking like we're talking, and he said, I find the greatest inspiration comes the harder I work.
Right.
Yeah,
I think somebody asked W.H. Auden, the writer, do you only write when you're inspired? He says, yes. But thankfully, the muse comes every morning at 9 o'clock when I sit down to my desk.
yeah, yeah. Uh, there's such a misconception about how you get to a place of greatness in life that would be intriguing to you. And
Yeah,
basically you got to go with what you know, what's available right now. And the dynamic starts changing. People don't think about this, but like if you were to take where you are right now, if you were standing and you take a step or two forward, the perspective and the light changes. And it's like in photography, we're always moving around
Yeah.
and, looking up, looking down, look at it this way. And uh, it's amazing when you're totally locked in. If you give into that, you stay paralyzed. But if you take one step forward, breaks the paralysis. That's
That's right.
you
That's
know,
absolutely right.
if nothing else happens, you break the paralysis or the confusion or whatever. It's like, okay, I'll be confused and paralyzed, but I'll be one step closer to where I want to be.
That's so true. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and so what caused you? So what I'm hearing from that is that you had something inside of you you wanted to get out.
Yeah.
And the next step, at that particular point, in
I'm still
terms of,
trying to get it out.
yeah, aren't we all? And
Yeah.
yeah, that's why people don't quit. We'll talk about
That's
that.
right.
We can talk about, well, we'll talk about it now. The thing is, like, people come and see the people are super successful and say, you got it made, you got this, you got that. Why don't you kick back? Why don't you back off? Why you see it's like it's just starting to get fun now.
And I'm just starting to get good. I
Yeah.
mean, Pablo Casals was like 87, and he says, I'm only now beginning to learn how to play.
Isn't that something?
It's a shame I don't have another
Yeah.
100 years in me.
Yeah.
And it's true.
But Tiger Woods, when he was at his peak, he said, I'll go out, I'll hit, 70 shots, somewhere between 68, 70, 65, and 70. And if I'm lucky, I'll hit one shot the way I want to hit it.
Right. Right.
And so it's that, but it feels so good, when you get it right, the feedback from that, the satisfaction from it, the joy. And
Yeah.
so be able to get to the point where you got a higher percentage of those things happen, even if it's a low percentage, it's higher than it was before. Plus, it's possible. And
Absolutely.
and where like going through the thing with the experience with Marvel Comics, that was a huge win-win for you because you worked at it. You had an idea, you tried it, and you got what the experience had for you, but also you got the education of uh, where you needed to go next. And you wouldn't have been so clear on that had you not followed through on that step, don't you think?
I do. I think the clarity is, it comes over time. It's triangulated. We make a series of missteps, and we don't always know exactly where we're going. And I think that's particularly true in the creative arts, where you're looking for your voice when your voice has never existed before. There's only been one of you, and there always will only be one of you. So
Right.
how do you find that thing that has never existed before? That's particularly challenging. Um, that said, I don't think that we celebrate failure enough. I don't think that we emulate Edison's practice of setting a quota for failure every month. He felt that if he didn't make a certain number of failures in his lab, he wasn't pushing the envelope enough. And then he tried to apply what he learned from each failure to all of the other experiments that were going on, not just that one.
Yeah.
So I think we need to celebrate failure and learn how to fail well and be able to maximize and we get as much out of those failures as we possibly can.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it really truly is a failure. But if you learn from it, if you iterate, if you move forward, if you find your next step, if you find what you don't want to do, those are successes. We just
Yeah.
have to follow up.
And you get that by giving that next stage or next step everything you've got. You've got to give an honest effort to
Yeah,
get the lesson or the result out of it. Like the Bible says, whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your
yeah,
might, you know, and no, I used to tell people, trainees on the way up, I said, right now you're getting started. You've got dreams of sugar plums and all this thing. You don't know if you're good enough. And I said, I don't know if you're good enough, but I know one thing, you'll never be good enough to do it if given it a half-butted effort. You know, piddling your way. You do not piddle your way to greatness and glory. You know
no,
what I'm
you
saying?
don't. Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah. You
You
don't
know,
shut. Go
it's
ahead.
not just grinding through. It's not just putting in the 10,000
Right.
hours. And it probably
Yeah.
doesn't take all that long, 10,000 hours.
Yeah.
It's more like perfect practice. But
Yeah.
how do we figure out what perfect is?
Yeah.
I think part of that is the reflection.
Yeah.
and getting some feedback from other people. It's like, okay, what just happened? First, you have to be aware
Right.
of what's going on when you do.
Exactly.
After it
Exactly.
happened, you have to reflect and say, what happened? Then it's useful to get some outside perspectives about how did they see it? And
Yeah.
then you're much more informed about what next step to make because you can make a million next steps. What's the one that's best for you? How do you try and optimize that?
Yeah, and I call that just put an acronym on it like ABI, always be improving.
Yeah.
You don't just do things, you do it and you reflect on now, how could we do that better, quicker, faster, better? And that allows you to basically put a a sharper edge on yourself moving forward in the future. This has been great, John. Thanks so much for sharing. Uh, I can't wait to get back and dig into some of your outlooks on different stages of your life you went through uh, moving forward to where you are today. Thanks so much.
Thank you.